Welcome to Encounter Jesus online followers channel, where you have access to the full expression of the spiritual giftings upon the lives of men who are completely sold out to God. Kindly subscribe and turn on the notification button. Thank you.
Hallelujah. Just give me floating sound. Let me touch a few scriptures. Too many people are on ground. That's their problem. When you are on ground, even things that should not be battles becomes battles. When I was coming here this evening, getting to the airport was surrounded with a very thick forest. There were hills, there were mountains. We had only one tiny road that led into that place. And if there is a hold up there, you can miss your flight. Because only one tiny road led into that airport. Everywhere was surrounded with forest, surrounded with mountains. And so you couldn't access the airport from any other means. And so sometimes there is a very long hold up and we are all choked and stuck. But you see, the plane does not have hold up. When it takes off, the forest counts for nothing. The mountain counts for nothing. It is those of us who are driving on ground that the forest and the mountain is a challenge. When the plane ascends, it takes any direction. No mountain can stop it. No forest can stop it. Because when you are on ground, your battles are too many. As you ascend in this conference, most of the things you call battles will vanish. If you are driving, you may need to uproot the mountain. You may need to uproot the trees. But when you fly, the mountain can remain there. You go above it. The forest can remain there. You go above it. And so this conference is designed to make you go above. To live above and to stay up there. Where you dominate and where you conquer. Nothing in God happens by chance. Everything in God is deliberate. And if you know how it works, you can replicate it any day, anytime, anywhere. That's the beauty of walking with God. It's not a fluke. It can be repeated. It can be replicated in any location at all. Because the power that sponsors it cannot be defied. And so tonight, my simple assignment is to show you what it takes to live above. And then the blessedness of living above. If I succeed in doing that tonight, we will celebrate God, trust Him for His power, and then we'll come back tomorrow and take it up from there. The Bible speaking in Ephesians chapter 1, from verse 19 to 20, when He gave us an example of what ascension meant. He said, and what is the exceeding greatness of His power to us who believe, according to the working of His mighty power. And then he went to verse 20. He said that power was demonstrated in Christ when He rose Him from the dead. Because the dead is beneath, is the realm below. So he said that exceeding great power was demonstrated when Christ was raised from the dead and when He was set at the right hand in heavenly places. And in verse 21, he said, far above principalities and powers. Far above principalities and powers, above every name that is named, not only in this world, but also in the world that is to come. And so when we are talking about ascension, when we are talking about height, we are talking about a dimension of authority that gives you an advantage over every affair of life. It can translate to wisdom. It can translate to speed. It can translate to productivity. But every expression of that operation keeps you in charge and gives you an advantage. And when a man is in charge, he begins to enjoy the fullness of life. In fact, the way this life works is such that you cannot maximize it until you have authority. There are many persons who have dreams that were never fulfilled because they never had authority. Either authority against devils or financial authority to sponsor it, or authority to be able to communicate it in a way that it will convince humanity. And so every time you see men making progress in life unprecedented, it means there is a dimension of authority that is at work in their lives. And so when we are talking about ascension, we are talking about the culmination of authority that gives you an advantage in your existence. This is why you must have to pay attention. Because if your visions will be fulfilled, then you need height. Because there is nothing you do in this realm without authority being included that it will be impactful. In fact, when Jesus was done with his disciples, he told them, I know you have been to Bible school with me. You saw me manifest miracles. You saw me manifest wonders. He said, but tarry in Jerusalem until you are endued with power from on high. Luke 24:49. Because if you go out with a good message, you will die. If you go out with a good message, you cannot affect your generation. You need authority conferred upon you. And so there are things you do in this kingdom that brings you into authority. So when we are talking about height, we are not just talking upward movement only. Upward movement is a physical or geographical expression of what height means. But in reality, height is actually a position of advantage. Height is actually a position of authority. Height is actually a position of power. And many of us will need a lot of height to fulfill the magnitude of destiny and vision the Lord has given to us. However, height is not a gift. Height is attained deliberately. Height is attained by putting efforts, putting deliberate intention. It is a mileage you cover because you are doing something. If you will, write them down. Go home, meditate on it. Because in the next 20 years, if you remain at the bottom, you will suffer. And if you suffer, it will not be anybody's fault. It will be your fault. So I'm telling you two things now. Number one, whether the next 20 years of your life will count or not is your choice to make in this conference. And number two, don't plan to blame anybody. Because if you fail and if you are suffering, you are the one to blame. He said in Psalm 24, verse 5, I beg your pardon. He said, he shall receive the blessings from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. So in verse 23, it said, who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? That means anybody can. In verse 4, it said, him that is of a pure hands, clean hands, pure heart, who has not lifted his soul in vanity or sworn deceitfully. He gave you credentials. And in verse 5, it said, he shall receive the blessings of the Lord. So these are three cadres of life that brings fulfillment to existence. And so tonight, one thing we are going to look at, having established that a place of height or a place of ascension is a place of authority, we are going to see the biblical requirements for those who ascend in life. Because not everybody ascends. At the end of your journey, you are going to discover that some persons are left at the foot of the mountain. Ask our fathers today, they will tell you, when they were young, all of them had dreams. Go to primary school and take a sample. Some will tell you they want to be presidents. Some will tell you they want to be governors. Some will tell you they want to be pilots. Some will tell you they want to be wealthy. Every child has a dream. But at the end of the day, when they are 60, 70, 80, you will discover that in a whole generation, you can count them. So there are some people who are held down. They have the best voices, but they are not known. They have the best inspiration, but they are not doing anything. And they have labored in the flesh. Nothing is happening. When you see a Peterson singing and the whole world is celebrating, it's because of height. He has come to a place where demons can no longer cage his voice. But there are many people who have better voices. Respectfully speaking, he's a very gifted young man. But there are many people who have even better voices that nobody is hearing. Because there are spirits that have incubated, emasculated their voices. So that even when they shout, nobody hears. So when we are talking height, we are talking number one, drawing from the realm of God because you have the right to operate there. And number two, we are talking stopping the other spirits that stop men from rising. That's the spiritual dimension to height. Then when you talk about the dimension of height that has to do with men or the physical, you are talking about a place where you get to and you can impact the lives of people. Because if you are not up, you can't lift men. I did an illustration in church and they were laughing. Let me show you something. Let me show you something. Hi. Who is a strong man here? Okay, come. You believe you are a strong man, come. Can we look for a smallish person? Let me show you something. I'm talking about physical height. My brother, come. Please come. Let me show you something. With all due respect. But you look big. I needed somebody smaller. That man there, come. That one there with black. Please come. I want to show you something. I'm trying to bring you to terms with the practicality of what I'm teaching. This is smaller. Thank you so much. Don't be offended. Can both of you sit on the ground? Sir, help me lift this man up. Try your best. No, use two hands. Try all your effort. This is height. He doesn't have height, so he can't. Now stand up. Lift. No, to you, sit down. Lift him up. The problem was not about ability. It was about height. So, when we talk about height, we are talking about your capacity to impart men. If you are down, no matter how you desire to help widows, you can't. No matter how you desire to help the sick, you can't. No matter how you desire to help the helpless, you can't. So the first is that you must gain height first so that you can pull them up. Are you seeing that? So when we are talking height, we are talking about capacity to impart men. There are men that you meet today, your story will change forever. And it won't cost them much. They can just talk and your life will change. And they can give you from the abundance they have. Your life will still change because they have height. So when we are talking about height, we are talking about authority to influence men. And then secondly, when we are talking about height, we are talking about authority to influence systems. Hope you know that there are people in this country who can speak from Abuja and there will be public holiday in Warri. They don't need to come here. When they talk, systems obey them. So there are two dimensions to height. The first dimension is a spiritual dimension. Where number one, you have access to the realm of God. So you spend from God's resources. And number two, you can deal with devils and demons. That's why I said Jesus is seated far above principalities and powers. And in Ephesians 2:6, he said we are seated with him. But there are things we need to do to experience that reality. Are you seeing that? And then in the natural realm, when we talk about height, is the ability to impact the lives of men so that your presence can improve their existence. And number two is your ability to speak and then systems change because you have spoken. This is what height is about, but there are requirements. God bless you. What are the requirements for height? I give you 5 of them quickly tonight. Number one, the first thing that gives you power for ascension in the realm of God is purity. I will take it from the spiritual dimension first, because the spiritual is superior to the natural. If you lack purity, you will discover that infirmity is a burden. Infirmity is a weight. Iniquity is a weight. All of that will pull you down. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, the writer was speaking, and he said, lay aside every weight that and sin that doth easily beset you, and run the race with patience. You know why many people cannot fly? They are heavy. Any equipment that wants to go high is designed to be light. Because it will need that lightness as an advantage to gain height. But you see, in the spirit, one of the heaviest weight you will carry are iniquities and attitudes or lifestyle that are not consistent with the nature of God. And so when you find many people who are gifted yet struggling, check them. There is either a sin or a weight in their lives. And so a man who wants to gain ascension in the spirit, the first thing he needs to do is to rid himself of weight. As fast as Usain Bolt is, if Usain Bolt is carrying this AC, I will beat him in Olympics. It will no longer matter his capacity to run. He is carrying a weight. If I'm running with Usain Bolt and all of us are wearing tight, he will finish. I will still be close to the starting line. But if Osembot makes the mistake of carrying this AC, no matter how fast he is, I will put my hand in the pocket and win him. The problem now is not his lack of speed. The problem is the weight he's carrying. Many people cannot ascend because they are carrying weights of immorality. They are carrying weights of lying. They are carrying weights of iniquity. So no matter what God does to them, in them, and through them, they can never ascend. Because those weights will pull them down. That is why for anyone who wants to go high, ridding yourself of impurity must become your priority. See, you will take time and outline everything that makes it impossible for you to approach God. And you will pray consciously, Lord, remove this lying. Lord, remove this immorality. Lord, remove this pornography. Because if it is there, he will forgive you, but you cannot ascend. Every time you fornicate and you ask for forgiveness, he will forgive you, but you cannot ascend. Every time you live in sin, you ask for forgiveness, God will forgive you. It's his nature. But the problem is that you can never ascend. And so after many years, you will now discover you have missed too many seasons. And those seasons you have missed are supposed to be the staircases of your ascension. So every time you miss a season, you have missed a staircase. And you will look back later, after 30 years, you are on the same spot. Iniquity has robbed many people of ascension. He said, who shall ascend the mountains of the Lord? Who shall stand upon his holy hills? He said, him that is of a clean hands, him that is of a pure heart. So the first credential for ascension in the realm of God is purity. So when you are living in sin, what you don't know is that the power of your soul is what you are spending from. It said fleshly lust wages war. Why do you think many young people today cannot have strategic decision-making power? Why do you think many young men today lack the needed inspiration to move their life forward? And the way destiny works is that what can affect your 10 years can happen in a second. You just miss the moment. You sat with somebody, the right words to speak didn't come. It's after the person left, you now remember what you should have said. What that person walking away, that's your 10 years going. Because what that person should have done, if you said the right thing, would have affected the next 10 years. But you see, you have spent of your mental power when you were giving yourself to iniquity. It says, flee youthful lust. It wages war against your soul. Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart with all diligence. Out of it are the issues of life. Too many of us are missing our moments. We are missing our seasons. Why? Because the inspiration didn't come at the right time. Sex, immorality, lying, hypocrisy, exaggeration, all of these things have made, it has thwarted the circuit of flow of inspiration. And so every time you are knowing what you should say at the wrong time, every time you are approaching the moment of your visitation at the wrong time. And so all of these spiritual cycles are taking place, but you are the one missing out. And so you will discover that somebody who carried your 5 years just left. You didn't meet him. Somebody who carried your 10 years had a conversation with you. You spoke for 1 hour. You didn't know what to say. Or you were saying only the wrong things. And when you were done talking and he left, he never remembers that he met you. And he just left with your future. Because you have allowed iniquity to stain your soul. Every time you stain yourself with iniquity, I tell you, you have wasted your future. Why do you think? See, the devil is smart. He knows these things. Hope you know that he was a cherub. He operated in the courts of God. He knows how God works. And so when you look at the world today, almost 80% of every activity in the world today is designed to suggest sin and iniquity. The other day I carried my phone tab. I was writing on my notepad. For God's sake, notepad has nothing to do with internet. But because my data was on, suddenly I clicked notepad to write. And a young lady appeared on the screen, opening her leg. I said, it was so embarrassing. What if somebody was passing? He would now say, look at Apostle. I was shocked and embarrassed at the same time. So they are forcing iniquity down your throat. Because the devil knows that the eye is a gate. The ear is a gate. The moment you see it, the brain will go to work. And then some people sit there. They are processing pornography, processing immorality for 24 hours in every 48 hours. You think that kind of person can host a project that will affect worry? Do you know the mental energy that goes into a project that has a statewide scale? Do you know the mental power that goes into processing a project that has a national scale? I tell you, you will not have that ability. If I give you my schedule for the past 2 weeks, you'll be shocked. The reason I am fresh is because I have not allowed iniquity into my chamber. Because if he enters, it will kill me. I returned on the 1st. I flew to the United Kingdom for a conference. Landed on the 2nd, sort things out. From the 3rd, we had a meeting with volunteers. 4th and 5th, we had the meeting. The next day, I had to fly to Edinburgh in Scotland. I ministered that night. The next day, I flew back to London. Ministered. The next day, I flew to Aberdeen. Ministered. No, I flew to Glasgow. Ministered for 2 nights and flew to Aberdeen. Ministered the next day. As I finished that Sunday morning, I told my wife, gather your bags. Reschedule my flight. I'm going to Nigeria. And that night, I came back to London, flew to Abuja. On Tuesday, I arrived Monday. Tuesday was Bible study. I thought on Wednesday, I had to go to Benue to defend my PhD. And that night, I sat on 248 pages of document and I was reading. Because I've switched from one word to another. I left the spirit word into chemistry. Nobody will ask you John 3:16 there. When I go there, I'm talking nanochemistry. And so my brain had to switch. And immediately, I was able in 24 hours to internalize 248-page textbook. Because that was my PhD thesis. And I was demanded to present it in 20 minutes. And everybody is seeing, because the professors are willing to disqualify you there. You have to prove to them that you did the research. And you also have to prove to them that you are adding value to humanity. Because PhD is not undergraduate. You must add something to knowledge. And in 20 minutes, I was done talking. It didn't finish. They now say, sit down. And you are facing 7 professors. And they're asking you questions from everywhere in chemistry. And they expect you to answer. How can your brain function like that if you are thinking pornography? If you are thinking masturbation? How can you function? When I finish, they say, go, you can call yourself a doctor. You don't gain height until purity comes into your chamber. Because it has something to do with your capacity. And as I finished from there, I came back to Abuja on Thursday night because I finished around 3 p.m. I hit the road 5 hours, traveled to Abuja. On Friday, I had to fly to Akwa Ibom. I was in Akwa Ibom. I switched back to the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. I preached there, preached the next morning, flew back to Abuja on Saturday in the afternoon. I was in Foursquare Gospel Church. And I ministered there. Sunday, I ministered. In the evening, I returned to Encounter Jesus and still ministered. And you keep that schedule round the clock. I've not told you about my family life. I've not told you about my business. I've not told you about my relationship with God. Do you think global things come cheap? It will take a lot of mental power. It will draw life out of you. That's why you cannot afford to waste life on iniquity. That's why you cannot afford. He said, I looked through the window. I saw a young man void of understanding. He said he was walking the path of death because he went the way of the harlot. The moment you journey the way of iniquity, the Bible calls it the path of death. Because there, your strength is wasted. There, your life is wasted. There, your energy is wasted. And so when the matters of destiny confront you, you are weak. You are helpless. You are vulnerable. And you don't know why you never ascend. Iniquity comes to eat you up. It comes to eat you up. And that's why Peter said to flee from this thing. You think you are having fun? You are eating your life. Every young man who wants to be impactful must know how to keep his or her vessel. Because there will be many demands on your strength. There will be many demands on your mental power. There will be many demands on your life. And at all times you must be fresh. It's not enough to be present. You have to be fresh. You have to be your best. And for you to remain like that, purity, you cannot compromise on it. I'm telling you why many never ascend. When they come to matters of their destiny, they are so weak. They are so tired. And you are wondering, You are just 24 years old. Why are you so tired? Meanwhile, our fathers who are in their 80s are still very agile, going about their business as if they are in their 20s. And then you see people who are in their 20s so weak because they have sapped out the energy of their destiny through iniquity. They've sapped out the energy of their destiny through impurity. And so the only thing they are good for is to sit down and gossip and talk what does not matter and argue football and talk about a gear and talk about nonsense that cannot impact their destiny. You are seeing a man who should affect a nation. He sits down from morning till night watching a seasonal movie because there's no energy. He cannot see. Matters of destiny come with demand. It takes a lot of demand to think. It takes a lot of energy to process. He doesn't have it. So all he can do is to sit down and waste away. And the root of it is impurity. The root of it is iniquity. If you want to ascend the hills of the Lord, he said your hands must be pure. Your heart must be pure. That means you must not be involved in anything that has to do with sin and iniquity. Peter said, run away from fleshly lust. Run. If somebody brings something that has the stain of iniquity on it, run. Paul said, flee every appearance of evil. Flee. Don't wait. That's why Joseph succeeded. When Potiphar's wife said, come and sleep with me, he said, no, I cannot do this evil. The woman grabbed him. The guy took off. If you stand there, you will fall. And most of you stood. You thought you were strong. And later you came back weeping. Because you don't know the formula. The formula is to flee. When somebody comes with lying and gossip, flee. When somebody comes with immorality, flee. God is telling you that he wants to promote you. And suddenly, a boy that you didn't talk to for 4 years now wakes up and says, Jennifer, are you still alive? See the way you have abandoned me. And then you say, no be so. No be who? Where are you coming from? I'm about to enter a new season. Why do they come at those junctions? You think the devil does not know? You that was cold, you attended many meetings. The only revival meeting you went to and caught fire, you are coming home. And then somebody called you and said, sorry, is that Matthew? You say, yes. Because you heard a voice that sounded, is that Matthew? You are about to sink into the grave. Matthew, why did you throw me away like this? Did I do anything? If I did anything, I'm sorry. Off your phone, delete the number and block it. It's a pit. You are about to be swallowed into a pit. Have sense, sir. Have sense. Destiny is at stake. You think demons are not watching? Listen, Jesus was 8 days old. They already saw his star. And they knew he would be a king. Every season of your ascension, the devil knows. And he will look for something that is a weakness. He will look for something that is a pattern in your bloodline. He knew what your great-grandfather fell to. He knew what your grandfather fell to. He knows what your father fell to. He will bring it to you. 90% of the chance, you too will fall. Because if Abraham loved fair women, Isaac will love fair women. Jacob will love fair women. If Abraham lies to a king, Isaac will lie to a king. Jacob will lie. The devil knows. He has the whole curriculum vitae of your family. And he will take from it every strategic season. And so what wise men do is that they run from iniquity. They don't stand to fight it. They don't stand to explain. They don't show that they are strong. They run. It's when you have run away, you now look back. If you still see any sign, add some mileage. It's needed for ascension. Flee from every appearance of evil. Your future depends on it. You will sit down, you will see somebody you taught is now taking over the world. Your student that you taught and you were encouraging, now you are in the same place he is teaching you. You see people that you want to Christ, they are taking over their world, and you are still there. You say, God, why? It's not God, why? It's Michael, why? It's James, why? It's Queen, why? Because you are the reason you are where you are. If you want to ascend, rid yourself of iniquity. Because you cannot appear in that realm with stains. He said, thou, O Lord, art of a purer eyes. He said, your eyes cannot behold iniquity. Number 2, how do you ascend? By humility. He said, in that same scripture, Psalm 24, verse 4, He said that person must not have lifted up his soul in vanity. You know, when a man or a woman has greatness, there is a way he thinks. And so when the devil knows that there is greatness in you, he will now start putting pressure on it. And what that pressure comes to do is to force you to start living a lie. And so instead of allowing yourself to grow through process from your little into your great, the devil will force you to start acting as if you have arrived. And so because of that, where you need to bend your head to learn, you will not. And in our world today, they've given it a branded name. They call it packaging. So you see people living fake lives, putting pressure on themselves. A man who is earning 40,000 wants to live in a house of 700,000. So he needs 2 years' salary to pay 1 year rent. So that people will think he is something. A young man comes to a place where he should learn. He sees elders. He wants to show so that they will say him too, he's there. Because he wants to snap a picture and put somewhere and appear in a way. And he's squaring shoulders where he should bend down. And when the devil sees that those tendencies are in you, he will now create a pattern of pressure on your life. And so your life will become fake. You will elude process. When you should sell, you are acting like the CEO so that people will not mistake you or people will not undermine you. It's a lie. Listen, packaging does not give you honor. It is God that puts honor on a man. He said, lay your hands upon Joshua. I will take of the honor that is upon you and put upon him. If you need to sell pure water, sell it gracefully. You are in your process. If you are selling okrika, sell it with enthusiasm. You are in your process. There is an experience you need to pick from there so that when you own a bank, you will not be deceived. So if the devil can't fight you, he will set you up so that you become an enemy of God. And the Bible said in 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 6 and 7, it said God himself, this is what he said, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. In due season he will exhort you. He said, but if you try to exhort yourself, God will be the one to elbow you. God will be the one to push you down. So the man is fasting and praying, but he cannot ascend. He goes to the mountain for 40 days. He wants that business to explode. He wants that ministry to explode. But God wants to save his soul. If that business explodes, that's why he will go to hell. If that business explodes, that's why he will go to hell. Because his pride is too much. So after praying and fasting, God will channel that energy to somebody else. So the moment he ascends, God will show him a picture of somebody, intercede for that person. You are not yet ready. And so every time you're on 30 days fast, you see a vision about 2-3 people. You pray for them, you come back. That's the only benefit. So that in eternity you have reward. But if you think that fasting will take you anywhere, it's a lie. God will humble you. He will keep you down. Because if you ascend with the garbage of pride, you will suffer what Lucifer suffered. Because when he saw himself that he was glorious, he said, now I will exalt my throne. I will. See, every time you try to exalt yourself, you are playing the script of Lucifer. It's a Luciferian script. It is God that exalts us in this kingdom. You don't exalt yourself. God is the one that lifts you up. And so he said the way God recommends you for lifting is when you humble yourself under his mighty hand. I'm showing you the organic reality of ascension. I can begin with prayer. I can begin with prophecy. I can begin with impartation. But hear me, no matter how much you pray, if there is sin in your life, you will not ascend. No matter how much prophecy is on your head, if there is sin in your life, you will not ascend. If there is pride in your life, you will not ascend. Did you not read the story of Jacob? After he was blessed, the Abrahamic blessing, he was the only person on earth carrying the Abrahamic blessing. The only person. Still, God could not lift him. The angel had to wrestle him all night. This guy was already having encounters. He had the covenant on his life. He had the blessing on his life. But the angel fought him all night. When the angel saw that he cannot take away flesh, he had to break his thigh. So the guy had to limp on a staff to be a prince. Because when he was walking on his 2 legs, he was too proud. He was too self-centered. He was too selfish. So let's cripple him. So that as he leans on that staff, he will not depend on himself anymore. He is too full of himself. And they broke his staff, his thigh, in order to bless him. If you are full of yourself, there is no way you can ascend.
Welcome to a platform dedicated to bringing you into the realities of Jesus. At Encounter Jesus online followers, we bring Jesus closer. An encounter with Jesus has the ability to counter the irrelevancies in the life of a man. No man encounters Jesus and remains the same. Talk about Zacchaeus, talk about Matthew, talk about Paul, talk about Abraham, Jacob, and the likes. On this platform, we offer you messages from the likes of Apostle Mike Orokpo, Apostle Arome Osai, Bishop David Oyedepo, Pastor Iya Adeboye, Dr. Paul Enenche, and the likes. And I believe strongly that it is your turn for an encounter. God bless. We at Encounter Jesus online followers are committed to quality content research to give you the best when it comes to growth in the Christian sphere. We go through the net for you. Pitch your tent here. We desire your gains in the knowledge of the systems of God. We ask questions to give you befitting answers. We bring Jesus closer to you.